Yes.
Okay, welcome back. So the next part of our segment is going to be CWS. So we're really honored to have some good representatives of CWS, including the next speaker, who's going to be Eladine Olivao.
Let's try it now.
Okay, can online hear now? How about now?
Seems like a connection. Yeah. Try now.
How's that? Can online hear now? Muted. It's just muted.
Online can hear. They said yes.
Okay. How about out there? Can you hear now?
Online is yeah, because that's the
Okay. How's that now? Better? Testing. 1, 2, 3. Online is clear, so maybe we'll just talk loud into this thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, welcome back. We're CWS and Eladine Olivao. So Eladine Olivao is the administrator of CWS. Really tough job. We're really honored to have her today, and thank you for coming, Eladine.
Aloha kakayaka kako. O Eladine Olivao, I'm Child Welfare Services, and I am so happy to be a part of today's convening. But okay, you figured it out. I'm just going to keep going with what we do. So I would like to, I'll talk as loud as I can, and if you folks can't hear me, just let me know and I can talk loud. I really can. So today for Child Welfare Services, I'm going to be just sharing a really quick overview about the department, and then we're going to turn the time over to Charlotte, who's going to be talking about our Family First Hawaii, and then we're going to present you folks with some data. I believe later I will be sharing a little bit about our complex needs cases that we are having. So basically, my job is I oversee the frontline staff of Child Welfare Services. And we have approximately 400, the capacity of 400 staff. We do not have 400 staff. I just wanted to make that clear. We do reports of child abuse and neglect, and it's within intrafamilial. That means it has to occur within the family. We operate, I can hear myself going, we operate 24 hours, 7 days a week. We do not shut our doors. And we have folks that man our reporting line, and we can share that with you folks. But you folks, I believe, probably has that reporting line. We have one for Oahu, and then we have one for the neighbor islands. We also have a human trafficking line as well, because we are also mandated to monitor and track our human trafficking cases. We're located on all of the major Hawaiian islands. And again, we're open 24 hours, 7 days a week. Okay. What we're going to share with you folks today is one of our biggest shifts. It's called the Family First Hawaii. And we're excited that we can share this with you folks about how the department is supporting keeping children within the family home. Charlotte's going to go over that for a little bit. And then Rachel will be sharing our data about how many families we hope to serve and how many children we have in our foster care system and things like that. So without further delay, I'm going to turn the time over to Charlotte and Rachel. Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right, so this slide is just giving an overview of what we'll cover in the presentation, and I do apologize for, in the interest of time, I'm going to brush through a lot of the other parts, but if there's a break, you can always ask me a question, or my email is at the end of the slide, and you can shoot me an email. Okay, so our Family First Hawaii plan provides child welfare services with a framework and pathway to dramatically reform how child welfare serves our children and families. Now, you're going to hear that in the introduction of our video, which I hope works as we play, but it's worth repeating because this is a game changer for child welfare services in that with Family First Prevention Services Act that was enacted in 2018, it really did change the structure of our financing for our Title IV-E entitlements. And it has been the biggest change since 1980. And so we are excited about it in that prior to FIPSA, the Family First Prevention Services Act, our services and the funding went into services for children and families after the child was removed and placed into foster care. And with Family First Prevention Services Act funding, we can now utilize the funding to put services in for the children and families before the child is removed to keep them with the families. And of course, through FIPSA, just going to say it, that we utilize evidence-based services. And that really does boost the quality of care that we are able to provide our children and families. So we can, next slide. So one of the things with Family First Hawaii is we really wanted to bring culture and identity forward to the forefront, and also as a way of making those meaningful connections with our community. And part of it was where you will see in the video that we share, we had a Polo logo that was created that really demonstrates like the heart and values of Family First and how we want to do our work and how we want to work with children and families. And also we really wanted to bring in that family voice and experience within every part of our implementation in Family First Hawaii. And this building our connection through a metaphor is really that Polo logo that you will see and hopefully you can associate with Family First, and as well as the colors, which I was really impressed with the lay, because these are our Family First colors. So I want to acknowledge that level of detail in the planning, and really just grateful for having this opportunity to be able to share and collaborate with people in here. So if we can for the next slide. Oh, can you pause it? So in creating our Polo logo that you see up there, and it will be discussed in the video, we wanted to be able to make that connection also to our Native Hawaiian population, not only as a paying respect to the host culture, but the Native Hawaiian families and children are the highest percentage of children in foster care. So we also wanted to create meaningful connections, something that they can relate to. And when we had our logo that was created with collaboration and consultation from our Native Hawaiian cultural consultants with Nakama Ahaloa, they came up with this idea of the polo, and you will see how it is illustrated, because once we had the logo, we wanted to take it a step further and really bring it to life in a video, because if pictures are worth 1,000 words, this video will be so much more. And we also wanted to have that video, we hope to have it frame our approach to addressing the racial disproportionality within child welfare services. Okay, play the video. your point, so we're not asking our staff to do more when they're already so overloaded. So we're trying to work on streamlining these internal systems. If you can, to the next slide. Okay. So with our uplifting parent and youth voice, we wanted to create space and a forum for our persons with lived experience to really provide the feedback and guidance and consultation throughout all parts of Family First. So even in the planning and development phase, we had made sure that there was at least a person with lived experience in each of the exploration groups that were deciding on the different services to bring within Family First Hawaii. In our installation phase, we formed the Lived Experience Advisory Group, League. And so we work very closely with this group that's made up of birth parents, resource caregivers, and former foster youth. And they help us inform like the different parts of our policies and procedures, as well as providing the insight and videos for training on family engagement, and even with our expectant and parenting young people population, which I will cover in another slide. We can switch. And so the services that we provide, and looking at what services we're looking in the exploration phase, that we're looking at what's already existing in child welfare that we can use. And so with that, we had our intensive home-based services, which uses the home builders model, which is an evidence-based practice, and that was incorporated in our Title IV-E waiver. And when the waiver ended, Family First picked it up and continued with the funding, and not only provide or continue these really effective services, which is 24-hour, the therapist is available to the family 24 hours, 7 days a week. And it is intensive services, so it's very short term, within 4 to 6 weeks, but it's very effective. And it's kind of like the service you provide to keep children out of care. And if that service doesn't work, the child goes into care. And with this, we are also able to expand our services, because previously it was only on Oahu and East and West Hawaii, but we're able to expand it over to Maui and Kauai. For our home visiting services, that's parenting support services for children in ages 0 to 5 years old range. When they were looking at the data and determining services for Family First Hawaii, they looked at the children that came into care, and I'm sorry, I don't have my notes, but I believe it was 46% of these children were in the 0 to 5 years old age range. And one of the biggest contributing factors to having our children in care was the lack of parenting skills for that age group. So we were able to, there were home visiting services were already provided to our families, but what changes is the evidence-based models that we use. So we use parents as teachers, as well as Healthy Families America. And instead of serving just 0 to 3 population, we expanded it to 0 to 5 to meet the needs of this particular population. So the last one we have is in our approved prevention plan is our motivational interviewing, and that we have not yet implemented. That we project will be implemented more towards 2024 and 2025. And although it is a service that our substance use treatment providers are already have long been using, what happens when we incorporate it in Family First, it's just more a changing of the billing practices. In the future, we might consider having it as a case cost cutting practice for our own staff, but that we haven't implemented yet. Okay, next slide. Okay, I was going to cut this out, but this is such an important part of, and I'm looking at Rachel because she's like our data queen, but this is such an important part of Family First, is the evaluation and the continuous quality improvement processes that we have. So we are continuing to partner with the University of Hawaii and Maui College for our continuous quality improvement, and always looking at or gathering the data too on, like, are we doing what we said we're doing? Is it working? Is it effective? Are we keeping children out of foster care? Okay, so who's eligible for Family First? We have different categories, but the first one that we're working on in our implementation process or the families that are served by child welfare services. And I'm just going to speed through this. So we have made it simple for our staff in saying that any child that is in the home with their family, with services, or maybe temporarily with grandma or auntie and uncle, while they work on reducing the risk factors or safety factors, if they are in the home out of family court involvement, they are family first eligible. So we kind of simplified that, but these are, like, if you see on the screen, those are the categories within child welfare. And then we have another, which is our voluntary case management, and that's our differential response services. So these are for families at moderate to high moderate risk that may come into child welfare, but better serviced or more appropriately serviced through our service providers in providing voluntary case management. And we also have another category of adoptive or legal guardianship. So these are families that have adopted a youth that was in foster care, and maybe the youth grows up and behavior challenges become unmanageable for families, and the youth is at risk of being brought back into child welfare. And so we want to provide these services to stabilize the placement and keep children with their families. And then our last category is our expectant and parenting young people in foster care and extended foster care. So these are our youth that are in foster care that are having a child or have a child. And this is the one category where their own child does not have to be at risk of foster care placement. This is where we want to provide these services and supports to our expectant and parenting young people. And I think the better supports that we can provide them, the better off we all are. So, opportunities for involvement. There are ways to get involved with Family First. And we have ongoing Family First work groups that I will actually cover in the next slide. But we also have a 1CQI team. We're working on that title. We're working on that group name. But it's an external continuous quality improvement team that's made up of service providers, agency providers, State Department representatives, as well as our own line staff, persons with lived experience, and Family First leadership involved. And this group really is a decision-making body. It's one of our decision-making bodies within Family First that will help with the ongoing growth and adaptation of Family First, and helping also identify gaps in our preventative service arrays and provide recommendations for improvement to our processes and practices as well. Another is our equity improvement collaboration. So this particular group we have incorporated into Family First. It was an existing group, and it has a lot of external partners that are involved, but we want to make sure that we are addressing any disproportionality issues and making sure that there's equity for everyone involved in child welfare. I can talk more about that, but I'm trying to rush through. Our last one is, no, not our last, sorry. Second to last, we have a placement prevention project, and it's a rather large scale project, but we're doing it in chunks. So we are currently focused on short stay follow-up, which are children that have been in foster care for 30 days or less. And the idea or thought behind that is, if they're in for that short a time, do they really need to be in foster care to begin with? So part of this initiative that we do is looking at who got put into care, what the circumstances were, and what the barriers, identifying the barriers to keeping them with their families and how we can address these barriers. And I must say that since we have started, it really has notable decrease on the amount of short stays that has happened. Not sure if Rachel will be sharing that. No, not today. Okay. And then our last project that we currently have is our public service announcement project. So we're looking at taking footage from the Koalo video, the 11-minute version, and turning it into public service announcements, so much smaller, much quicker, so that we can reach a wider audience to share that message of Family First and keeping children and families together. Next slide. Okay, so this is our organizational chart, and it has the different work groups, and each of these work groups, so kidding but not kidding, we are one of the smallest states with some of the most work groups. in Family First initiatives, but we have 8 work groups, and these work groups have an assigned role and responsibility and heavy Kuleana. So these work groups, together with their leads, they do a lot of the heavy lifting for Family First to move our work forward. But we do have our steering committee, our executive committee, and then we see where our 1CQI team, I've talked a bit about it, but it's also our implementation management team, which has our staff, like representatives, our section administrators, our supervisors, our work group leads, as well as some service providers, but we are looking to expand that as we're moving forward. So if there's an interest, but this particular team does manage how we do things, like really, if the work groups have recommendations, we bring it to our implementation management team and we approve and move it forward and how we're gonna, what processes we use. And in our different work groups, we have our program contracts, which is the holding place for all of our different, like our 4 different services and categories. And as we implement them, we do have meetings with the providers of each of these different categories of Family First to make sure we're facilitating a smooth transition into our implementation process. We also have, of course, our lived experience training, our data ITCQI team, which is really valuable in our data collection and management. Communications, now some of you might be on our Family First listserv. If you receive our newsletters, then you are honored that we handle the internal and external communications for Family First. And talked about the equity improvement collaboration. We have case pathways, which does our policies and procedures, and then our fiscal team. All right, so where we are now, we are in the 2022-2024 phase of initial implementation. It's still initial because we have not implemented everything yet, but we're hoping by 2025 we'll have reached full implementation. Am I good for time? Okay, all right. So I think we're going to end there. If there are any questions, is there time for questions?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Like even with Rachel's data sharing. Like
Do you want to do that?
Yeah, why not?
So we're gonna flip the slides too. Okay, I was really worried about this, that I would be too short and you wouldn't be able to see me at all, but this is way better. So I'm Rachel Thorburn and I work with Charlotte and Ella Dean in Child Welfare Services. And I wanted to share with you all some of the data that goes along with Family First to help you to understand it. But I have this plan or mission about that. I don't think we and you all work directly, well, not all of, but many of you out here work directly with families, directly with children and parents, right? With things. And I think that we're all here gathered, and it's very exciting to share information to try to help the children and families to get better services, to be safer, to be better functioning, to feel supported, to be supported. And as I'm about to share data and people are talking about programs, we get abstracted away from the actual people. So in my personal effort to make sure we always remember, I have a couple of just quotations from actual humans to remind us, to connect us back to that we're talking about people. And I wanted just for this part, like 2 volunteers, maybe from this side, when we come to one that could go to the mic and just read out what's on the screen. Is there people, a couple people could do that over here? Okay, great. So I wanted to start with the lived experience. There we go. Can you come and read this for us so that we remember we're talking about real children?
My dad isn't around a lot. My mom gets stressed out caring for me, and my brothers are her own. She drinks sometimes. I don't think it's a big deal. Yeah, she passes out in the evenings occasionally, but she's a good mom. I love her.
Thank you so much. And I wanted to remind folks that you can move to the next slide, or can I do it? Okay, the primary data question for Family First Hawaii to design what we needed to was this. What are the reasons that children are coming into care? Am I allowed to do what I'm doing or not? Oh, you want me to use that?
You can control.
All right, let's see if I can. So obviously, if we're trying to keep children out of care, we need to know why are they coming into care? And it's way too simple to say abuse and neglect, right? Like, yes, of course, abuse and neglect, but we have to dig deeper. What is behind the abuse and neglect? What is triggering the abuse and neglect? So we did that, and the top reasons behind the abuse and neglect are these. The top reasons. So parents lacking parenting skills, parental drug or alcohol use, domestic violence, parent-child relationship problems. Sounds like a little vague. What you talking about? Like really intense difficulties, usually stemming from behavioral or mental health challenges on one or the other part or both. And then parental mental health challenges as a separate category. And you can see in the next slide, this is like when we're designing Family First, this shows you how prevalent these different issues were. When children enter foster care, we code, why are they coming in? Like what's going on? These percentages add up to more than 100% because you can mark more than one thing, right? You can have inadequate parenting skills and domestic violence going on, right? But in 2019, this is what we had. And it's not an anomaly year, or I wouldn't be showing it to you. Like most years look something like this. But you can see that there's this huge inadequate parenting skills as one of the major, like almost 80% of the families coming into child welfare have this as one of the major things going on with them, which is why our services, when we design them for Family First, they're about parenting. They're in working with the parenting and building their skills, right? So you're like, okay, database decisions. I know you guys are all about that, right? You want to make decisions based on what's really going on, not what you imagine is going on or what you think might be going on, but what's actually going on. So that's how we got those services, right? We looked at what was going on and we chose the services accordingly. Moving on. Okay, so now I'm going to just tell you how many people have we served in Family First so far. For the home visiting services that my colleague Charlotte talked about, these were the Parents as Teachers and Healthy Families America models, where they go into the homes and work with the families for the 0 to 5 children. Okay, so here you go. And this shows you all the children that have been served so far since we started this Family First. This service started in March of 2022 and through pretty recently of the end of May 2023. And these are preliminary numbers because our data is like a little bit homogene. And so we're always cleaning it up. So I don't mind you guys having this and knowing this, but don't go like putting it in a publication because it's still preliminary. But you can know this as preliminary data. So you can see for just this service, we served 206 children, fewer families, right? Because some families have multiple children. And you can see the breakout of which region. And if you're kind of like, what's up with West Hawaii? Some of that has to do with staffing issues. In West Hawaii, you'll see in the next slide as well. But this gives you the breakdown regionally for how many children have benefited from the services so far. And then for the intensive home-based services that Charlotte told you about, this is with the home builders model, where it's super intense, right? 4 to 6 weeks, you have this therapist who's on call 24 hours and does a minimum of 10 hours in the home each week, 10 hours per week, minimum, potentially more. And here are the numbers, and Charlotte mentioned we are expanding to the island of Maui and Kauai, the island of Kauai. But we are not serving them yet. So these are the numbers of how many children have received these services. And again, you're like, what's up with West Hawaii? Like, it's mostly a staffing issue. So, but people are like, what's going on? But families are getting the services, just not as many as we would like. But and as Charlotte mentioned, this service is extremely effective. It's hard to give you exact percentages of who gets the service that stays out of foster care, but it's good. It's more than 50% of folks that get the service don't come into foster care, which sounds like 50% success, but no, these all would have gone in otherwise. Like, that's actually incredibly amazing. I don't have the exact numbers for you today. Like, call me in a few months and tell me you want it and I will calculate it. But it's a really, really effective and efficient service. And so if you think about it, it's very exciting that we're keeping kids out, right? That would have gone in otherwise. Okay. And then I put the numbers together, like for both services, so you can see the numbers served by the region. Yeah. And I know Oahu's like way bigger. And it's not, one sad thing is it's not just bigger because of our population being bigger, because I don't have it by population, but it's much easier for people on Oahu to access services and to get, you guys know this, right? I'm preaching to the choir, right? But so it's not proportional. I wish it were, but it's not really. Some of it is. We know Kauai is actually smaller. There are a smaller number of children in child welfare on Kauai than on Oahu, way smaller, but it's still not proportionate. We'd still have an access issue, which, again, there's more data on that another day. But I did want to show you that. So the total number of children served so far by Family First Hawaii Services statewide is 311 children. A lot of children, hard to get your head around that. So to help you out, I have a visual for you. These are the 311 children. Really, I counted and I put them all on here so you can be like, wow, 311 children. Look at that. That's how many children have been served so far by Family First Hawaii. And before I leave you, I wanted another volunteer to read about a parent experience, if they can come up to the mic. And did you want to? Yeah? Are you willing to? You were like, yeah, I'll do it. No. Do you want it? Yes. Okay. Great. Okay. Yeah, if you can speak from that mic, go ahead.
I have a newborn, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. My wife works full time and I'm home with the kids. I would get so frustrated and overwhelmed that I used to tell the 4-year-old to watch his sisters, and I would hide in the bed and run back. That's the best plan I know, but now I feel I have options for what I can do when I'm feeling that way, where the kids are much safer. But more importantly, I haven't been getting to that point. These services have helped us a lot. I'm grateful.
Thank you so much. And again, I wanted to remind us, we're bringing it back to the actual people, these children and families that we're serving. I wanted to make sure to end with the voice of something optimistic too, that it is helping. Some of these are really working. And I believe that was the last thing that I had. And then Charlotte, you can come up here if people have questions, so that either of us can answer the questions. I'll stay here too.
We have an art.
Oh, are there any questions? Are there any
Online question. Are you what's going into the school or talking for the high schoolers? I think that it's for us to start there. Because I have young adult children that they're educated. They kind of, I think everybody.
Do you want to go?
Okay. So there was a question of whether we as child welfare are going into schools to address or train on parenting skills for high school age children. And the answer is That's a great idea, but we're not doing that currently.
Yeah, and I'll do a little caveat. So we aren't, love it. And there is this part that Charlotte mentioned about the expecting and parenting young people that are already in our systems. They're either in foster care themselves, these young adults, or they're in extended foster care. Those young people, we are providing services directly to, like the ones that or we know already need it, that there's a child on the way or there is an actual child. So they are getting it in terms of the young adults, but only that population.
If they come into child welfare and that is an issue, then we do have service providers that provide like parenting support and skills to the parent themselves, but that's if they're in child welfare. Any
when someone's on probation, they behave really well. Whenever they come off of probation, kids on supervision.
So Home Builders has booster sessions, right? After they close out in the 4 to 6 weeks they do. I'm just not quite, don't remember like when their boosters come in to check on with the families. And with child welfare services, you have to be at a certain level to get into child welfare, right? And no one's knocking on our door asking for our services, usually not. But at that level, so if they're not at that level for child welfare involvement, all the better. They might, like, I think when we do have our assessment workers go in and assess a case and then address they put in family intensive home-based services, and then they might consider referring them to our voluntary case management or our family strengthening services, which is our differential response to just give them that added support and monitoring.
And the other thing that I would add, and I see someone who knows the answer better in the audience here, is that we regularly do safety and risk assessments on the families before we would close out a case. So that after they finish the service, it's not like, okay, great, you're done. We do monitoring of the kind that you're talking about. We'll do an assessment. And if it looks like they're still at risk, we won't necessarily pull the child into foster care. We can monitor the child in the home, either in a voluntary way, like a voluntary family supervision, or we involve the court but not take the child into foster care and petition the court for court-ordered family supervision, where we're still involved, we're still monitoring, but we're not going to close the case until when we do our assessment, things are looking solid. But seriously, Winnie, do you have more to add to that since you're more of an expert on this than I? Sorry. Okay, I was like, there's someone who knows way more about this than I do. Okay, in the audience.
And we may need to pull her up for any further questions. Are there any? Oh, Dr. Humphreys.
Hi, Humphrey, child analyst. I was intrigued in the slide that you showed that I was to come in service, and one of them was the parental mental health. That was a smaller category, but maybe just where I work, I know a lot of kids with mental health challenges, and a lot of them have parents. But I was just curious if you could talk more about that. Is there a service that goes with that, or just any thoughts about that?
Right. So at this time, we don't have a particular service that we're referring parents to. For families that are involved with us, it is pretty common for us to order a complete psychological evaluation if we have concerns about a parent's, not just their mental health, but their functioning. How functional are they? And that gives us a lot of information. And once we have that information from a psychological evaluation, then we would refer to not to community services or whatever their healthcare covers, to mental health services and such. And a much higher percentage than just the 12.4 get the evaluation. A fairly high percentage of the parents in our system we do full evaluations on. There need to be some indications that they need it, but being involved with us is a big indicator that we might need to figure out a little bit more about their functioning. Sometimes you find there aren't mental health issues. Their their cognitive functioning is high, but the modality that we've been trying to teach them stuff in is wrong. Like that maybe someone's been like lecturing to them and they're way more of a hands-on learner. And the psychological evaluation can give us some information about that too, like the modality that would work best. It's not a great answer, but it's where we are today.
Rachel, I have a data question. This is Curtis Tomo. So I was wondering ballpark, how many patients are on CWS at any given time? And if possible, by island, about how many?
Right. No, I can tell you that. So I look at this all the time. So at any given point in time, right now, it's approximately 1,000 children are in foster care statewide. It's lower now than it used to be. Like Eladine's looking at me like, really? You sure? But no, it's gone down. Like it used to be more like 1,500. But it's slowly gone down recently. We're really happy that it's about 1,000 now. And about 50% are on Oahu. And then, like East Hawaii and West Hawaii together make up a really large, like next chunk. East Hawaii much higher than West. I'm trying to think if I don't necessarily know the percentage off the top of my head, but let me just think about this. If I'm saying, yes, so about 20% of the children would be in 25% maybe in East Hawaii. And then the rest, the other 25% would be split among West Hawaii, Maui, and Kauai. And Kauai has the smallest number. I know that wasn't exactly like a perfect answer, but
Yeah, that was helpful.
okay.
So for those in the audience, all children when they enter CWS, they're automatically enrolled in Medicaid if they're not already. So they're all Medicaid CWS.
That's right. Like there's a tiny percentage of the children that are not receiving Quest, and those are usually like military kids who have TRICARE, but it's a very small number. Everybody is basically Quest kids.
Thank you. So that's very helpful. Thank you, CWS, for you.
Thanks. Thank you. So my turn to present some of the work that we've been doing with our Quest Integration health plans and with our child welfare services. So I'm Sharon Thomas. I work with Department of Human Services MedQuest Division and my boss, Dr. Toma. But I get super nervous standing up and talking in front of people, but I'm not sure how much you folks have been talking to one another, and I kind of wanted to do like a hand raising activity to see, okay, how many folks do we have here from Quest Integration Health Plans? If you could just raise your hand, and then folks look around and see. And so I see a lot of our health coordinators and EPSDT coordinators. Okay, and then folks from DD. Okay, we have a lot of leadership from the DD, more leadership and some coordinators, it looks like. And then we also have other Department of Health, like Dr. Humphrey from Camp D. And then Family Health Services Division is also here in the house from Department of Health. And who am I missing? Oh my goodness, Chris. And one of our most appreciated members that actually have come here in person. We have a lot of other folks that are online as well, but Chris Robbins from Kapiolani is here from their case management. So I just wanted to let everyone get a feel for who's around, but also wanted to, I might as well go ahead. My nervousness volume is down a bit.
So,
And child welfare.
Oh my goodness, and child welfare. Thank you, Rachel. Right, and child welfare. Because, well, there, we had an opportunity. Our MedQuest, our Medicaid federal oversight over the past several years has been providing a lot of different opportunities through affinity groups, which is really a quality improvement with a technical assistance where they bring folks from multiple states together, usually from Medicaid agencies, and they handhold you through a quality improvement process. And so this one was different. This one was for both your Medicaid and then your child welfare within the same state, and then also up and bringing multiple states together. And so this looked like a really interesting opportunity for us, and we have the need, right? So, and I don't have Tonya on here. My partner in crime here, not in crime, but my partner in quality improvement from child welfare is Tonya Mahi, and she's on a well-deserved vacation right now. So this I'll do my best without her, but perhaps in the future we'll present again and have a much better presentation with her. But I'll go ahead and move ahead. So the Child Welfare MedQuest Affinity Group collaboration. So as I mentioned, there were several states that we're still not quite complete with the affinity group activities, but there were 11 other states that participated with us, and just wanted to share that it's because it's once you know one state with Medicaid, you know one state, and that's the same thing we learned with child welfare. It's different in the way the organization is, and even down to the policies, it's different in every state. But I mentioned that we wanted to grab this opportunity because there's needs, right? We have obvious needs. And some of those, the first one, a mismatch in overall utilization of well-child visits. This is a little bit of a hindsight one that we discovered in this process, but what we found when we started to look at the data of kids that are EPSDT eligible, and then also kids that are in child welfare, it's not apples to apples comparison. I'll give you that right now, but this was a red flag for me. So our overall EPSDT data is around, and again, this is not for publishing, but this is just for general understanding, about 72% of our EPSDT population, they receive their well child visits 72% of the time in the expected time period, right? Not apples and apples, because then we're looking at our child welfare, our kids that are coming into custody. There's a policy where they need to have a comprehensive health visit within 45 days of entering care. And so that essentially is a well child visit or your EPSDT visit. All those are kind of synonymous. So just know that as well. So the kids that we were looking at in our sample, 42% of those kids received their well child visit, their comprehensive health visit within 45 days. That's why I say it's not apples to apples, because there's a timeline there. You know, we have our regular scheduled well child visits, and then we have this kind of untimed 45 days expectation of having a well child visit. So I'll leave that right there for now. And then there was also a desire for improved communication. I can't tell you how much and how often I heard from my Quest Integration EPSDT coordinator, Sharon, we want to do better with child welfare. We feel like we can, but there's a breakdown in communication. We're not really able to talk to each other. We want to do better. And so here's this opportunity. And then kind of stepping back and looking at this affinity group partnership that was provided to us, this technical assistance. We used a model for improvement. So this is what we used. It's basically a plan, do, study, act model. We set our aim. We figure out how are we going to know that we are on track if we're aiming in the right direction with the changes that we choose to make. And it's an iterative, small and rapid iterative process. True quality improvement, right? We have our aim statement, and I think that is next. I'm going to go ahead and sit there for a second so you can read it though. The Ohananui CWS MedQuest Hanahui will increase the percent of children placed into foster care who received comprehensive health visit within 45 days of placement. So that's the policy, is to have them get a comprehensive health visit within 45 days of placement, from that, my red flag 42%, which is, I need to work on that. That's Sharon's job, to 45. We're not trying to say we're going to get everyone to 100%. We want to make a dent. We want to get something moving because we can do better. So that is our aim. We want to move that ball there. And so what data are we going to do, and what did we do? And so we did them through PDSAs. The first PDSA was really just kind of dipping our toes in the water, and we're still in progress. I should say that to start off. Our first PDSA was to look at, okay, what affects kids accessing care? And so our first PDSA was to keep kids, when they enter child welfare, to keep them in the same health plan. We have 5 different quest integration plans. Well, I wonder how it affects them if we don't change their plan when they come into care, right? Because logically we're thinking that that's going to improve, but I don't know, let's test it, right? So we just dipped our toes in, and we did a little bit of a retroactive look and to see, and yeah, it seemed like that would work. So okay, that's a good idea. PDSA number 2, which has been really our main one, is communication, right? That's the one we knew, like we need to communicate. And so PDSA 2, and it's still in progress too. It's still going through various iterations. And that's opening up. We brought all of our quest integration health plans. Actually, we started off with one, right? Small, iterative, and getting larger the more you're finding success. So we started out with one health plan and one section. Unit, yes, because sections and units. We brought them together, and whenever a child's coming into care, I'm going to go ahead and jump. Whenever a child is coming into care, nobody can read this, so don't worry. We want the child welfare folks to go ahead and send an email to the quest integration health plan representative. Let them know this, and this. Basically, who's this child? Who are they going to be staying with? Who's going to be helping them get to their comprehensive health visit? And then pretty much just do that warm handoff to the health plan and let them do what they do best, right? That's what they do best. They help kids access care. And so that was our initiation of PDSA 2. PDSA 3 is something that came up because once we started getting everyone into the room, the actual workers that are doing the work, boy, so much opportunity, right? You start to hear about all these different things, and this is just scratching the surface. There's a lot of opportunity for improvement for us to chip away at, and just talking is actually helps a lot to clarify. I'm going to go ahead and jump forward a little bit. I'm probably running late. So overall PDSA 2, because I want to share, just kind of reflecting back. So far, the kids, once we started communicating, 100%. We're 42 to 100% of those kids accessing a comprehensive visit within 45 days, 100%. In fact, actually, we're doing better. A majority of them had visits within 30 days. So we're, who knows? Who'd have ever thought communication works, right? And so, and so that's been the silver lining there, right there, having significant success. And just a little bit more reflections. Just for the affinity group, actually, Tonya and I were invited to present for State Spotlight in August, and so these are just kind of reflections on the affinity group process, and that they actually all of the technical assistance was pretty incredible and very patient in walking us through really useful materials. But it's so hard to stay on target with your quality improvement, especially as you're learning about all these different factors that are affecting your kids' care. But it's really opened up a lot more opportunity even outside of this kind of this project. I think that we're already on the path to improving overall care for our kids. So that's been the most monumental, is that communication piece. And then that number 3, the shocking findings. There, we had a hard time getting started because just even the initial data was shocking, and kind of stops you in your tracks, right? So having to reorient and going back to the aim and refocusing and staying on track there. A lot of misunderstandings. We're communicating and able to clarify when systems don't behave the way that you expect them to, when things don't go the way that they're supposed to, right? We're able to come together and communicate. Okay. Sustainability. So like I said, since we're communicating, and I think I'm coming close to the end here, we're continuing with tests of change. We're not 100% all good, but we are showing improvement with the test of change that we have done. So we're going to continue slight adjustment, retest until we get something where we can continue to spread. At this point, we actually have all 5 of our quest integration plans participating, and we have 3 sections participating. And did I say that right, Winnie? So Winnie is here. She's one of our child welfare section administrators that her section is participating. Yeah, and so we will be spreading as we can, as the units can make that shift in practices. Future tests of change. One thing that's come up, you know, it's not as we haven't been talking about just behavioral health all day today, but behavioral health is also another assessment and necessary access that we need to participate in as well. But we were starting with the low-hanging fruit, right? Get kids to well child visits. That's definitely easier than behavioral health access, as we know, with the challenges. And then we're also looking at, between child welfare and MedQuest, and how can we, because we had such shocking data results, how can we continue to have an ongoing data relationship so we can share data? So we're starting really high level discussions, and so that's exciting for us to look at for the future as well. And I'm going to go ahead and end there and see if there's any questions. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So we had one particular, and that's one of the things actually we'll probably, thank you, ma'am. So Dale was asking, what happened once child welfare folks emailed the Quest integration representatives? What happened from there? And so the Quest integration folks would outreach the resource caregivers, or wherever that child was placed, whoever that child was with. In every instance, it was resource caregivers. They would outreach the resource caregivers, or if initially, we should actually have one of the EPSDT coordinators respond, but they would sometimes find that the child had already had or was already scheduled for an appointment. And if not, they were able to outreach to the resource caregiver and assist in, oh, do they need to have a new PCP? Do you need help finding a new PCP? Help schedule that appointment if they need that appointment. And then also it was a health plan representative outreaching them and saying, hey, this is who I am. This is what my plan does. And so it actually even opens up a whole other realm of opportunity for the health plan to offer support and as a resource. How'd I do?
It's great, Sharon. So in the interest of time, we'll move on to Elodie. So start with the teams, but no, actually, the last week.
Were we going to take a break?
I think we're, if we fix it, well, we just skip the break.
Okay.
Okay,
but I have
take a break.
the fishing pond, the overgrown. What's it?
Hanaho, Eladine Olival, Child Welfare Services. So before I go ahead and move on, thank you. I don't know anyone else that can be so excited about data than Rachel. Don't you folks agree? Like she just gets really jazzed up about data, and we know that we need data to do the work that we do. So we're very, very grateful for Rachel being a part of our team. And then of course, thank you to Charlotte and Winnie who's here. So I just wanted to do some really quick acknowledgements for my CWS team. I just need to say, I am humbled to be their PO'o, the head of child welfare. During this time, we are making great shifts with doing a more community engagement. We are doing culturally sensitive approaches. And I'm proud of that. You know, I'm Native Hawaiian, if you couldn't tell. And so these shifts are really important for us because like Charlotte shared, 46% about their represents the Native Hawaiian population. And so I always think, wow, if we can impact 46% of the children that are entering our foster care, how farther along would we? So I just wanted to start with that. I'm going to talk really quickly about complex needs. And I'm going to preface the conversation a little bit with just saying in the last year, because that's helpful for us to see, because I can talk about what happened. I've been with the department 29 years. It started on Molokai, and then I went from Molokai, I went to Maui. And then in 2018, I said, oh, I think I can do this on Oahu. So it was really a leap of faith going from Molokai, 6 staff, you go Maui, 43 staff, and then you go from Maui to Oahu, where 400 staff. And so I believe I'm in the right place at the right time. Whether anybody else believes that, I don't know, but I believe I'm in the right place at the right time. So within the last year, we have seen an uptick in our complex needs children. And I'm just going to share like a really quick landscape of what we're facing, because I believe there's going to be a panel. Yeah, later. Okay. So within the last year, so let's just go from July of 2022 to July of 2023. We have had over 15 children sleeping in our CWS offices. We know that our media partners, I gotta call them partners, have been sharing information about some of the challenges that we are facing. And so we have children sleeping in our offices, and we had the option of hotels as well. But what we've noticed is that it's not been specific to any one island. All of our islands have been facing this challenge. This morning, as I was a little bit late, I got an email from someone from South Dakota. And what we've learned is that complex needs and difficult placements nationwide not only for us here in Hawaii, but I do believe, and I'm going to not wrap up now, but I'm going to share some of the things that have helped us to address these areas of complex needs. So I got this email from someone in South Dakota, and she's my equivalent. She's sort of the director there in child welfare, and have been in their offices for, I think, close to a year or more, where they just cannot find any homes. And a lot of the kids that come with us, they come to us, they're already coming into our system because they're experiencing abuse and neglect. So that just adds another layer of what they are experiencing. Yeah? So they're coming in abuse and neglect, and then they're coming with behavioral, emotional, and mental health needs as well. And so we've been trying our absolute best to take care of those. We don't like sleeping in offices. They don't belong sleeping in offices. We've been partnering closer with our judiciary system. We've been working with Dr. Toma is such a blessing for our, for our agency. When we're stuck, we're calling Dr. Toma, we're calling Dr. Humphreys, and we're like, 911. It's like we're sending out this bat signal that if we can come to the table. And every single time, without resistance, they come to the table. And we're so appreciative of that. And so that's sort of the landscape. I want to share what is some of the things that have worked, because I know in the interest of time. What has worked is when we have our health plans, when we collate, we collaborate, we integrate, we work together, we malama each other. That's what helps with this. Being able to call, get on the phone and say, I need help. Can you come to the table? That's also been really, really helpful for us. Another thing that we see, especially with our population, is that if we can take our service to them, go to their home. When they're experiencing really high needs kids, it's difficult for them to pack up the kids, pack up the child, get on the car and go, can we make our services more accessible? So sort of like a call to action around that. We are currently experiencing an autistic child that we knew him when he was 6, and our department got involved and other departments got involved. And then for some reason, the services faded. Now, I think he's 13, 7 years later, he's coming back. He's bigger, he's stronger. And what we've noticed is that if our services were not following him, now we have to go ahead and address his needs now. And thank goodness, through partnerships that we have, we're able to find a placement for this child. If not, our staff would be sleeping in the office starting tonight. So I guess I just wanted to share that. And again, I'm not sure if there's any time for the data piece, and probably no more. I just wanted to share if we, as providers, can really put ourselves in the place of the parents that we serve. And we think about that all the time. We expect them to do the things that we as providers need to do, and we struggle with doing that, working together. And yet we expect that of our families and our parents. And so when it gets tough, I hope that we can always remember that and just hang in there. We gotta continue to service and work together. So I know that was really quick. I hope that was okay. Thank you so much.
That's perfect, Nadine. And we do have time. I thought we finished at 12, but it's actually 12:30. So Rachel.
Oh, so Rachel, okay. Rachel, thank you.
Okay, so I have a little bit of data to share to help bring this a little bit more concrete. And as you learned from last time, I want to also bring it back to the voices of those with lived experience. So I'm going to need 2 more volunteers, as long as you can get to the mic really fast. There's one at the beginning and one at the end, just, okay. So this is the voice of a youth in shelter. Whoops, sorry. Being a little bit, there you go. They say it isn't my fault that I'm here in this place without my mom or my brother or my sister. My little sister, I miss her so much. It hurts so much not to see her. I'm gonna burst. No, I can't do that in a place like this. Also, I don't believe them. It's definitely my fault. I'm to blame. When they think I can't hear them, they're always talking about my challenging. I get really, really angry sometimes. I can't control them. I think it started after my dad left. And again, I wanted to start with that to remind us, as we're having all these conversations, real people, real experiences, real pain. Okay, so let's see. Won't move. Can you move it for me? My slide? Okay, so we're talking about children with complex needs in foster care statewide. Go back, yeah. So in June, I just did this like middle of the night last night for you, so fresh off the presses. In June, in 2023, in Hawaii statewide, 186 children in foster care had complex needs. And I'm like, what do you mean? How are you defining that, right? Because Dr. Humphreys was up here telling us there are all these different ways to define intellectual disabilities or impairments and cognitive issues, developmental issues, mental health issues. So I'm telling you what I mean here is that these children require care and attention of a caregiver beyond the care needed by other children who are the same age, who had experienced abuse and neglect and were living in foster care. So all of the foster care kids who are abused and neglected already have high needs, right? Your baseline is super high. And then on top of that, 20% of that population need especially higher level of care or help, meaning that they need more attention from caregivers. So about 20% of the children in care. Okay, I'm gonna move it this way. Nope. Not like, okay, and then one outcome of these kids having these multiple needs, right, is multiple placements. So in foster care, I assume you all would believe with me, regardless of your experience with the population.
We can just hear your voice.
I absolutely can. Okay, so regardless of your experience with foster care, you would believe that if a child comes into foster care, you want them to be in whatever place they're going to be for the whole time they have to be there and not move around, because that's traumatic, right? Like it would be for any of us if we're like, okay, you can sleep there for a few nights, now pick up your stuff, go over there for a month or two, now I'm moving you. Extremely traumatic for children, young people. So one of the things we work toward is trying to keep the number of placements down. And children who have multiple needs are more likely, complex needs, often, yes, duly diagnosed or multiple issues as well, but not necessarily, right? They tend to be in multiple placements. So in June, in Hawaii statewide, 215 children in foster care had been in 5 or more placements. And 55 of that 215 in foster care had been in 10 or more placements. So these things, like, they go together, and this really does relate to like what Elodie was just talking about, right? These kids, and I hope you understood what she was talking about staying in the office is because there's nowhere for these kids to be, and so our staff are living in the office with children. Our offices aren't set up; they don't necessarily have showers or kitchen, like full kitchens and stuff, or bedding, like, you know, an actual true sleep on bed, and that's because there's nowhere like for them to go.
and there are many reasons that, you know, Eladine and others can talk about in more depth, but I did want you to understand that one of the outcomes, right, of having children with complex needs and at a higher rate is this problem of multiple placements. I think when I was looking last night, there was like one child who during their time in care had been in 30 placements. Another child had 24 placements. Those were the highest end, but like, what? Oh my God, it's terrifying, right? So I wanted to share those numbers with you. And whoops, okay, I wanted just briefly for someone to read this. Can someone come up to the mic and read for us to close this out? Oh, great. You did a great job last time. So this is a youth who's in their 7th home within 1 year. Go ahead.
Families perfectly nice. They want us all to have dinner together. Why? So they can ask me a ton of questions. We feel all shame. Yet I exist. Someone's cooking something nasty out in the kitchen. Are they going to make me eat that? Nobody asked me what I like to eat. I haven't had Filipino food in forever. A kid at the last one I was at was eating lumpia one day. When I smelled it, I almost started crying. I stole one. It turned his back. Got in trouble too. Didn't get a bite.
And I hope that you could hear from this. Part of what I love is that it's this really simple, kind of like focused almost on the food, but it's still all of us are like, oh my goodness, right? Like it hits you. Real child with really struggling. So that was all. I wanted to share just some numbers about how many kids, complex needs, that like one outcome of that is all those multiple placements. And remember, real people, real stories, real voices. Yes. Right. I don't have the data at my fingertips. I can certainly tell you those that are at the like very high end, they have to have been in care for a little while, right? It's not that they've had 30 placements in a month. That doesn't happen. The ones with higher placements usually have been in foster care longer, but not. It's true that teenagers like act out more, yes. However, we do have young kids who can't stay in stable placement. I don't have the data today to share, but Eladine, did you want to speak to that?
Much going on, especially if there's big traffic, which we know. So we usually pick the last stretch of we had quick our Oahu office here. The ages 13 probably is 17, and sex abuse cases is sex abuse, female, and then yeah, so that sort of some had one where they were expecting. It is like a
And there is in terms of the need for resource caregiver homes. Sex abuse is always like this taboo thing. People are like, I don't want that. You know, they're probably going to disclose at some point. You know what I mean? Like we might not know it up front. Later down the line, that can be part of it. You know, so you can't take in people who are like, I don't want to deal with that, because you never know. Just like any other kind of issue, you might not know. This is what we know of today. You know what I'm saying, because you guys work in this. Okay. There are questions online, it looked like? No? Okay. It looked like on here there are like hands or comments. Okay. It's fine. Okay, I'm like, I see like that there's something in the chat and like 3 people maybe have their hands raised. Or... Okay.
Some folks have had their hands up for a while, but we have the opportunity now. There's folks have any questions for Rachel? Or Eladine, or anyone, or Rachel. can come off mute. Can I? I'm assuming that they were just left out.
Oh, okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right.
Well, that was great. So, you know, so we have a couple of people come up, Dr. Humphrey, this round. Gonna go over some sample cases. So just pretend this is not an auditorium, but a small room with the table. We're all facing each other, kind of panel discussions. So, look the first case. So, you know, while we're waiting for people to come up, we really want to thank CWS. So it's by design that we set aside a lot of the agenda for CWS. Also, all the cases come up that we'll discuss are all CWS cases. So really, we really appreciate CWS, and I can't imagine, like, on top of what we normally do, then you stay in the office with sleep with kids, challenging kids. Like, that's really above and beyond the call. So really, whatever we can do from the case manager side with DDD, Quest, you know, chemistry, we really want to do. So we want CWS to know that we're all partners in this, and you're not alone. We'll do our best to try to sit up. Sharon, we sit up here. Okay. Sharon, how about the online here?
Yeah. Yeah. We might be able to.
There we go. So people can hear us?
Yep, the
Is that
online folks.
awesome?
Sure. Okay, Sharon, if you bring up the first case slide. Okay, so the first case is a DDD and Quest case, and it's looking into nursing agency shortage. The first case is 14-year-old male, severe ASD, autism spectrum disorder, nonverbal, severe intellectual disabilities, constant supervision, including assist with feeding, bathing, toileting, patients in diapers, family with culture and language barriers, extended family not in the United States. Father works full-time as a security guard and part-time as a construction laborer. So he's pretty busy. Mother is the only caregiver for the disabled child. She does have 4 younger biologic kids, same father, generally healthy, and elder parents that live with her. Her parents live with them. They do have some help intermittently from the church, but it's kind of hit or miss. Very religious family. Mother is being followed by CWS. CWS feels like with a little bit of supports, this mother would probably do okay, but really, really burnt out. The mom's in tears. The mom's saying, I can't do this anymore. Before something happens, I want to give this patient to CWS. So she's voluntarily giving up the patient to CWS. CWS calls Quest office and says, is there anything Quest or DDD can do for the patient? So there's a scramble, there's a meeting going on. Family is financially okay. They're struggling, but they can make rent. They're not homeless. There's no substance abuse, domestic violence. There's not a lot out of the social kind of overlay. So pretty intact family, high burnout. So the question, honestly, the answer was not at this time. We have a nursing agency shortage. What can we do? So that's kind of where the case starts off at. So the reason I bring up this case is that the starting point is we have a nursing agency shortage. That's not the ending point. Like in this case, that was the ending point. Like, well, what can we do? There's a nursing agency shortage, but that's not the end. That's the start. So now we talk some more. So I don't know, like what I guess what do you guys think of the case? This is such a, I gotta tell you, this is a common scenario that we have for Quest, for ChemHD too, nursing agency shortage. Really high needs is there, but what kind of thoughts do we have on this type of case? I don't know, I'm gonna put you on the spot because it's a fictitious DD case, but maybe Kurt.
I think to start with, we got to make it clear that for DDD, because of the person's age, she wouldn't be eligible for adult foster home placement. So we want to make that clear that we don't need placements for if they're adults. So that's a rule out from the get go.
Yeah. So can't go into a DD dom, can't go into another DD home, but we can provide home support. So.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, my thought is to maybe try to go back to, more communication with the mother, the caregiver, the father, and try to figure out, are there any interventions that could be put into the home that might support them that are not a nursing agency? Some of the things that they're dealing with, you wouldn't need a nurse to do. And in some, sense, they also probably need people to talk to, need, other peer supports, community supports, other things like that. So I guess that's maybe one thought that I'm having is if the thing that they're asking for and that we've identified isn't available, what other things can we all bring to the table, ideas to try to figure out how to help?
Yeah, I think another thing that comes to mind is we probably could offer respite as an alternative. Also, because it's already linked with DDD, we do have nurses within our units that can do consultative assessments and evaluations on the situation to make further recommendations if they need greater nursing care or whatever. So.
Yes. So the other thing that happened in a case like this, supposedly fictitious case, right? But in a case like this, the Quest plan had offered services at some time. The family said, no, we don't want services, but we don't know why. But so there was some attempt to reach out, but there was obviously a lot of needs, but there was a disconnect maybe in the way we asked. So no ABA from Quest at this time. So that's another option there. But how about any of the Quest service coordinators have ideas like what we could try in these kind of, yes. Yeah. So yeah, good question. I didn't put it up here, but child is enrolled in DOE, getting DOE services. So during the daytime, it's okay. There's some respite during the day. So it's not like a runaway, it's a disabled. Any other thoughts from the service coordinators? Yes. Okay, great. Yeah, so that was Kaiser. So the thought was that really to reach out to the family to see what type of cultural needs are and try to get the appropriate cultural kind of connections and to really, I think that's really a good point. So whenever we reach out to the families, the goal is to find out like how's it going, right? That's the goal. The goal is not to check off the list that do you need help or not, right? But sometimes we're busy with so many cases, do you need us to come do an assessment or not? Do you want a service coordinator or not? But really the goal is how are you doing? And how are you doing is sometimes hard, like in this case is a Micronesian family. So there's just some cultural kind of things, hard to kind of, how you ask makes a big difference. Of course, you guys all know better than me because you guys are a lot of your case managers. I think there were reports from of either neglect or abuse, but in the investigation, it was like found that this is probably going to be intact home with a little bit more supports. We could keep the family together, but it was hard from that point forward. It's like what services, who can bring what, when, and then this is a mother that's ready, like this week, ready to give up. So,
Answer that question on that. We could keep a case open and be like in child welfare and be monitoring the family, see like are they assessing, offering whatever service like if the initial assessment is like we seem okay, but we don't want to just close the case. Good luck. We can keep it open and monitor them and offer them things for a while. So that's I think what that's supposed to be. Like an open case, the child's not in foster care. An open case and we're monitoring the family, offering services and checking on them to see if things are okay or if we need to get involved further.
Child is, other uncles don't know how to, their cooking skills or how to interact. So maybe training other people.
yeah, I think that's a good idea. Or the caregiver, maybe the caregiver, mental health needs. Interesting. So one of the things that comes up on the Quest side a lot is that when we do an assessment or like assign a health coordinator, case manager to do an assessment and do a functional assessment, a lot of times we have like this terminology, natural supports will take care of that. So natural supports, like how does natural supports work when we can't find a home, when they can't find a parent? And so I really wanted to challenge our Quest plans, like, when you find CWS cases, what exactly is natural supports? What's expected when we can't even find a foster parent? So really to kind of think about natural supports, try to be as flexible as we can with the kind of quote natural supports. Yeah. Like in this case, the natural supports is like giving up. They're like, oh, I'm ready to give up. Yeah. But I would challenge that be very careful with what's assumed in natural supports, or at least vet it a little bit further. Yeah. So, but interesting case. So also when you think of nursing agency shortage, keep in mind that's not the end point. That's the starting point, right? So in the past, when we've heard of cases like this, we'd call all the Quest plans and we'd say, who do you have for nursing agency and why not? Molokai. And then because the state can ask that of the Quest plan, right? Like, but say HMSA wouldn't call Aloka and ask, who do you have for why not? Well, state can do that. So we've done that. And we've gone back and say, hey, we have this agency and for why not? So there are some things at the state level that can be done. The other things we've done is we've called DOE. We said, who do you have for Molokai for RBT? Or who are you using on Maui for ABA? And then we've kind of asked that BC, right? Or can you do with the plan? So don't be afraid to escalate cases. If you have a really problem case, then really I would give you this advice for the Quest Plan health coordinators is to reach out to your supervisor, reach out to interdisciplinary team meetings, really escalate the case as fast as you can, as much as you can, because even if there was a mistake done, what should have been done, I would still escalate it. Because if something goes wrong later down the line, everyone's going to look back and they're going to say, oh, you should ask for help. So don't be afraid if you're a Quest plan and you say, oh, we should have did this, but it wasn't done. We should have proved this, it wasn't done. Just escalate the case anyway, really, because it's not about how you look at the plan or how the state might scold you. It's really about the kid, right? So don't be afraid if something went awry. Share everything, escalate up, and then sometimes when other people get involved, there's different options you can do. Like just yesterday, Kurt Humphrey and Ryan and I met and we said, well, we'll put this guy on DDD and CAMHD, right? You're not supposed to, but when you escalate cases, things like that can be looked at. So, okay, next case, please. Okay, Dr. Humphrey. So this next case is is a case of patient is medically complex and has behaviors. So in this case, it's a diabetic case. So 15-year-old female on neighbor islands with history of abuse, PTSD, ADHD, impulsivity, and type 1 diabetes, including 3 admissions in the past 6 months for DKA. Average student in elementary, so it's not a DDD case, but no longer attending school, runaway with intermittent non-compliance with adverse outcomes, has connected in the past to some support staff, especially some of the CAMHC staff, and on occasion has done well with compliance for weeks at a time. Both CAMHC and CWS actively seeking placements but challenging. Patient shows up this week in ER but admitted for DKA, now medically stable, and the ER social worker on a neighbor island is calling you to pick up the patient because it's time for discharge. You, the social worker, is calling the plans and MedQuest to see what kind of resources are available. So the reason we made up this case is because sometimes you have a medically complex case where impulsive behaviors or things on the fly has really devastating outcomes. Could have been a transplant patient, could have been, but you don't have time for kind of runaway kind of activity because he could die. Yeah. So what kind of thoughts you guys have in this type of case? Maybe we start, Chrissy, come from the hospital room.
And we have several.
We can.
So absolutely, I mean, it's hard enough to be a teenager without diabetes and worrying about your self-image, and let alone dealing with all this. But, in the hospital, we're trying to set them up for success when they go home, making sure they have all the skills, they have access to what they need to stay healthy. But we can't even imagine what they're going to encounter when they leave the hospital. So our goals in the hospital are to set up the best possible chance for them to have what they need when they leave. And so hopefully we can reach out to a family member or somebody who they have had success working with in the past to make sure that there is another caregiver who is trained and can help support that teenager. We also always reach out to the service coordinator, health coordinator from our plans. We're lucky to have really good relationships with all the groups, and we appreciate you all.
Yeah, Dr. Humphrey.
Yeah, so, my initial thought is, we have a lack of providers, residential home options for all kids. But when they also have the medical, kind of complexities that the kid in this hypothetical does, that, makes it even, trickier. But we have had, I think, had some success with, multi-agency, multidisciplinary, staffing, communication, teaming, talking around the needs, and, asking the health plans and asking, folks, well, if we can identify a facility that could take this kid now, do some work on some clear treatment goals, and through your agency put in a nurse that could maybe help train the staff over there about how to manage diabetes and keep this child safe, could we cobble together enough supports to make something workable? And so sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't, but when everybody's kind of putting their heads together, I feel like that's when we've had kind of most success with complex needs kids like this.
That's great. I agree. So the most stressful kids to find homes are the ones that are like younger teens and they're runaways. Because if you're responsible and they run away, then you feel like, stressful. Am I going to take another one like that? So, and if they have a medical complexity on top of that, then you feel really responsible. So how are you going to find people to say, oh, bring them to my house? And it's really stressful. But the more supports that you can offer through the Quest plans, to CAMHC, then the better the chances to find a taker and keep a taker. Yeah. So really, like, when you have some of these CWS cases and they're medically complex, think, why is it a runaway? Is it, what type of services are available? How are we making it more attractive to find a resource caregiver for the patient? So, because the flip side is when they're on a run, then it's even worse. It's even more expensive, right? DKA and ICU stay is even more expensive. How about the case manager? What type of ideas, thoughts do you guys have? Yeah. Yeah.
Just thinking. You made us all cry. Because you didn't get on one.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think having everybody together, I think the silver lining was the pandemic. Finding it that
Yeah.
we continue to do that. Of like, even that's. Well, we didn't part of the roles. Creating just bringing it all to the table and us acting to each other and trying to make our table for. So we did, but I want to thank my team right now. I'll be something. But it was just great, and despite the stories for not only the state of Hawaii but for HMSA, I think everybody.
Yeah, great. So that's why I really appreciate Sharon Thomas bringing this group together, because the common theme is that it takes more than one agency, right? You got to cross like ChemEC, DDD, Kapi'olani, you know, CWS, sometimes MedQuest. So really, and really, the other common theme is don't feel bad about escalating cases before they blow up, or before they become legal, or before they call the governor's office. And, you know, so that happens, right? So, so yeah, that's great.
Can I
Yep.
just make one quick plug to talk really brief about HiSync? HiSync is the Hawaii Interagency State Youth Network of Care. A mouthful of an acronym, but it's an awesome group, interagency leadership that are meeting monthly to talk about policies and high level kind of things about how the system is functioning together. But there is also the expectation that that group will serve as somewhat of the final place where these cases will go when they're escalating through, you know, various levels of difficulty. So there are high links, which are the local HiSync organizations, and various other groups. But when kids get identified in that area or any other, they can be kind of escalated. And then we don't often talk about specific cases in HiSync meetings proper, but through that interagency work, we have developed other meetings where we do discuss cases with CWS and others. And so that whole interagency teaming kind of concept has been really helpful in general. And so I just want to plug HiSync. It's a very useful structure to help us manage some of these really tough problems.
Yeah, that's a great point. So HiSync is this interagency collaboration that works with youth, and part of that is complex youth behavior challenges in youth. But you know, it made me really clear that one of the missing pieces at HiSync is the quest plans. So maybe there's a way we could, you know, slowly include them over time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 5 minutes left. So last case is they have some mental health, but they have some DD, but maybe nobody's really primary on this case. This is a really challenging group. I gotta say, it comes up every month. There's a call between Kurt Humphrey, DDD, self working on this. So this type of case. So 15-year-old CWS male followed by CAMHD for PTSD, conduct depression, and has been refractory to treatment interventions on the CAMHD side, including institutional care on the mainland. It's also a history of mild to moderate DDID, but not in DDD. Probably doesn't meet the bar to get into DDD. So those are even more challenging kids. They can get in trouble. So history of SPED, but also what's really fascinating, had a history of expressive and receptive deficits, like off the chart when they tested him. Like, so remember in the past we talked about you have to be able to respond to cognitive therapy, lots of psychotherapy, chemistry. So he did not. So not in the DD waiver, doesn't meet criteria, functioning a little bit too high, frequent runaway, did not respond to pharmacologic treatment for mental health or counseling in the past, now still acting out, sleeping in the CWS office. They're worried because he's intermittently violent. So what do you, maybe we'll start with the panel first. What are your thoughts on this type of case? Sounds
Just feel
familiar,
like
yeah?
you, yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
seeing
they
it-
all do.
we-
They all
yeah.
sound familiar, and for me, I feel like you saved the most challenging for last. I mean, with the other two, my sense is that if the system is working and if we have all of the resources that we say we do, we can help those other kids. This kid is falling, I think, into a bit of an actual gap
Yeah.
where we don't really have
Yeah.
a system, a plan, we don't really have what this child needs. So that's what we're working on to try to figure out, well, how do we develop that and make sure that there's less of a gap? I'm not sure I know the, yes.
Grant funding for these applicants who had developmental deficits but didn't meet qualification for.
Yeah, you want to repeat the question?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think you're referring to Project La Lima. That would maybe, no, I don't know.
Yeah, it
But
was.
that's a
something-
different thing. Oh, okay.
No, but go ahead, whatever.
Well, there have been various efforts through the years to try to address the GAP group. I am not sure I know historically about all of them and what exactly has worked and what hasn't worked, but my kind of sense of things is that kind of the area where things have struggled is we have developed some, for instance, in CAMD, we developed adaptive behavioral intervention as a service, which is intensive in-home therapy with therapists who are specifically trained to work with kids who have co-occurring developmental intellectual disability and mental health diagnoses. Finding those people, getting them trained, keeping them in staff, keeping that service going as an option has been very difficult through the years and darn near impossible in some locations. And so it's a service that is in our service array that we say that we have, and then when people actually need it, is it actually there that we can provide it? Sometimes the answer is no, and that's been really disappointing.
Yeah, so for the case manager, you'll see cases like this come up, like the mild to moderate ID, but testing too high for DDD, mild autism spectrum disorder, but not in DDD. But some type of mental health issue going on, hard to put your finger on it, acting out a lot, refractory to all treatments. It comes up every month, I gotta say. And a lot of times they end up on CWS somehow, difficult cases tend to end up on CWS, a lot of stressors. So I don't have a good answer, but any comments or questions from the audience on this one? Yeah, never been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so the comment was on, was there a psychologic? Because that seems like a starting point. So there was not a recent psychologic. We found an old psychologic, but never been diagnosed with ASD. Uh, but suspect that he might have ASD. So one of the thoughts that came up was, why don't we try ABA, provisional diagnosis of ASD. So that was in motion. Actually, the question actually approved to start that, but got admitted for something else in the meantime. So yeah, that's a good thought. Okay, how are we doing on time? Okay. Okay.
Continuation data. I have an individual who's been identified appropriate as ICF care at a facility level, but I'm unable to find an ICF. Oh, well. Individuals are too behavioral, right? Place in their home. What else is the best?
Is it a DD patient or adult or child? Adult DD, yeah. So it meets criteria for DD but can't find a home. Yeah. Earl, you want to take out?
Yeah, that's our world, unfortunately. I mean, we do have a small population of individuals that should or could possibly be considered for ICF placement, but we just don't have the facilities. And it's even more challenging for our neighbor islands who more so don't have the facilities available. So what do we do with these individuals is that's $1 million question. Yeah.
Your homes for children.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So, to try to close it out, I know we're running short on time, the last topic was how do we know when to reach out for a health coordinator from the Quest plans, and how does that process work? And who should be calling for a health coordinator? And do you guys have any thoughts on that? Like for example, with CWS, like should they call for all patients to get a service coordinator or for certain patients to get a health coordinator? Yeah. Yeah.
I think that we're aware that our patients don't know always that they're in CWS, right? So CWS member and their workers. And help escalate the case. Placement like that. Then we can see if it's appropriate or not.
Yeah.
In the pilot program, we're notified that one of our Aquana members has been taken into care, they're automatically requesting them from level care, so a higher level of reach level.
Yes. So for those online, it sounds like the answer is kind of a soft yes. Like the health plans would want to know if they're in CWS, and you can reach out to kind of inquire if you need a health coordinator or case manager from the plans. Okay, we can talk more, but I think that's,
If you don't have direct lines that you will have.
yeah, so I think we'll close it now, Sharon, if that's okay. So thank you all for being here. You know, I really appreciate you taking up the time, half a day. It's really a good cause. You know, we talked about some of the sickest populations, CAM-HD, DDD, CWS, you know, Kapiolani. So it really does take a concerted effort from multiple groups in the sickest cases. So please reach out, please escalate things as you see challenging cases. We're always glad to collaborate. Thank you. Thank you.